Well, if you're into hot takes or just solid betting advice, you've come to the right place. I'm Adam Kaufman. This is The Sweat. Thanks for spending the next hour with us or, whatever amount of time you have. We appreciate it. We're glad you found us. We're going to start in the NFL, where Amari Cooper is expecting to play in Week 10 despite his knee injury. A.J. Green appeared in line to play, but now he's going to be out indefinitely. Darius Geis is back for the Redskins, but Adrian Peterson might still start after the bye anyway. These are just some of the things that are on the table. We're going to talk about really everything other than Antonio Brown popping off. Again, we're not going to do that, so don't worry. We're chasing and fading with our panel of DraftKings contributors, Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich, and Steve Buchanan. Look at that handsome bunch. Week 10 kicks off tonight, boys. Chargers, Raiders in Oakland. So I want to know if you're chasing or fading some bets that we've got on the DK Sportsbook. And first things first, this game, it's basically a pick 'em. Chargers favored by 1.5. Reed, you are our resident Raiders fan, so we're going to stick with you here first. Yeah. Would you chase either team with the spread or prefer to stick with the money line?
I mean, I'll go with the spread here. And if you look at the Chargers, they're 4-0 against the spread. Excuse me, around there, 4-0 or 5-0. Against the spread in Oakland, right? So they do play Oakland really good. They have Oakland's number. There's some weird stats out there that the last time the Chargers, when they have been in LA, and this is way back when, is that the Raiders have never beat the LA Chargers. And so there's all of those stats compiled against the Raiders, but I'm still going to take the Raiders straight up. If I can, money line, if I'm feeling a little bullish on this, but against the spread, all of the stats and the numbers point towards the Chargers covering here.
Well, Jeff, Chargers minus 130, Raiders plus 115. What do you think?
Yeah, this one is looking a little bit tight. I mean, it looks like a little bit more money is coming in on the Chargers, obviously. I was a little bit surprised to see Oakland as a home underdog, essentially. I mean, they're sitting around +1, +2 all week. I would probably just bet the Raiders money line here. I like the fact that you're getting nice plus money here. I really feel like Oakland is not getting enough credit for some of the things they're doing. They've got a pretty elite run-stopping defense. Yes, their secondary has been really troublesome in spots, but at the same time, they've overcome that, either to cover spreads or to just win outright like they did last week against Detroit. I think coming into a division matchup, this is the team that's one game out of a playoff spot essentially right now. They're kind of rolling. They've got some confidence. They can laugh a little bit at AB self-destructing on social media. I'm going to side with the Raiders here.
Emerson's not here for your troll job there, pal.
He'll see this eventually, don't worry.
I'm sure he'll see a screenshot. You could at least, if he were here, he'd probably just tell you that Rufus doesn't discriminate and he's equal opportunity and blah, blah, blah. Bukes, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Jeff here. I like the Oakland Raiders money line here, getting the plus money on them. They're only 3-4 record-wise as underdogs so far this season, but I think they can totally match up against the Chargers here. The Chargers we've seen them struggle. I know that they looked okay against the Packers. I know they got away with a win there, but for a while, all they would do was kicking field goals. They could not score against a Packers team that was clearly struggling on both sides of the ball. So now we have a Raiders team that really has looked good offensively. I know their pass rush isn't anything special, but that Chargers offensive line kind of keep going back to that. They keep having their issues. Not necessarily looking for Derek Carr to get sacked too many times. He has one of the least amount of sacks in the league so far. So I think there's a lot of boxes that the Raiders check off. So getting them at plus money feels like the way to go here. The spread is really close. That could really go either way here, but getting the plus money on the Raiders, I'll definitely take that one.
Ulrich, it's a pretty high over-under, 48 points. You chasing that?
No, I was a little bit surprised to see this number and just where it opened up and kind of where it's sat all week. I mean, these are two of the slowest teams in terms of pace of play. The Raiders are the 6th slowest and the Chargers are the 9th slowest. And you saw last week what the Chargers really want to do. They want to run the ball. And with this new offensive coordinator, I really feel like they're going to try and just employ that strategy, even though it's not really the greatest idea in this matchup against a pretty good Raiders run defense. So I do feel like these are two teams that are going to want to grind it out a little bit. It's a Thursday night. It's short rest. I think 48.5 is a lot asking these two teams. So I like the under here.
Yeah, especially, as you just said, the fact that it's a Thursday night. Offense is hard to come by in those games. Bukes.
I like the over in this one here. Like, if there's a team you want to throw against, you can do that against the Raiders. If there's a team you want to run against, you can do that against the Chargers. So I think there's a lot of good matchups for what the other team wants to do. So I do think that the over can hit here. I do agree with Jeff. These are teams that do like to slow it down, but I still think there's a lot of points to be had in this game here. Like, we look at the Raiders secondary, and they are one of the worst in the league. Like, we rag on some of these other teams like the Eagles, the Buccaneers. The Raiders are right up there too as well. And like for someone like me who likes the Raiders to win in this game, if I think the Chargers are going to be playing from behind, then we could definitely have some points here from Phillip Rivers throwing the ball. So I do think that the over can hit here. I know it's come down a little bit since the beginning of the week, but that even makes me like it even better at 48. So I'll take the over in this one.
So, Reed, I guess you're the decider here. Chase or fade?
Yeah, no, to Steve's point, I think it was up at 49 at some points earlier in the week, and now it came back down to 48. And he's right. If you look at this defense with the secondary, with Oakland, very, very bad. Their run defense, either it being because teams just decide to pass, has been pretty good. In total run defense, they're number 5 overall. What kind of scares me about hitting the over, because I do think that these teams can be in a shootout, is the defenses, too, in terms of turnover percentage. They're some of the lowest in the team. I think Oakland is at 8.4% of drives where they get turnovers. The Chargers not that much better at 11.45% in terms of those drives ending in a pick or in a fumble. And that kind of scares me, because I do think that in this competition or in this contest, you're going to need a defensive score potentially to ensure that. Now, again, these two teams, like we mentioned, have bad defenses on both run and pass respectively. So I'm going to side with Jeff here a little bit just because it's a Thursday night game. This matchup specifically, 5-0, the under has hit. So I'm going to say under.
Derek Carr is not the MVP candidate he was a couple years back before he got hurt, but he has thrown a touchdown, 7 of them, as a matter of fact, his last 3 games, while Phillip Rivers is averaging just 1 his last 3 games. You can get plus money on Carr for tossing more TDs than Rivers, with Rivers at minus 150 to Carr's plus 121. I know it's a lot of numbers to digest here. You chasing, Steve?
I like the plus money on Derek Carr. Like, I know we mentioned that you can throw against this Raiders secondary, and that's definitely true. Like, against wide receiver twos, they're actually one of the worst in the league. So that's a nice little nod to Mike Williams for the Chargers, especially in a captain spot here. But the Chargers like to run in the red zone. Like, they will take Melvin Gordon and run the ball, pound it in if they have to, whereas Oakland likes to pass in the red zone. They like to go to Tyrell Williams. They like to go to Darren Waller. Like, we've seen Tyrell Williams score in every game except last week. Darren Waller finally starting to get the red zone targets that we couldn't figure out why he wasn't getting them to begin with. So I know Josh Jacobs is in there. He can vulture a touchdown and whatnot, but we see Derek Carr throwing a lot more in the red zone than they're trying to run the ball. So I absolutely like the plus money here, 121 for Carr to throw more. I know Rivers has that multi-touchdown upside, but again, they just like to – they're a team that runs in the red zone, so I'll take Carr.
Reed, that's one resounding yes. How about from you?
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders, if you just look at this matchup, they've scored 3+ touchdowns in their last 5 games, and their defense has given up 3+ touchdowns in 7 straight. And so I know I said I like the under, so this is really has to get into that 46, 47 range. And I think that's where it stays. And Derek Carr, you know, he's been doing well. He hasn't been turning over the ball as much. He hasn't been fumbling the ball as much as he's usually doing. And so I do like this. I know we touched on a little bit that the Chargers secondary is good and is a lot better than the Oakland secondary, but I do like that plus money with Carr.
I think what we're learning here, Jeff, is it's close and hard to not go against yourself. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. If you look, I kind of feel like if you like Phillip Rivers in this bet, you should probably just bet the Chargers to win or on the spread, because if Phillip Rivers throws like 4 touchdowns, Chargers are probably going to win, right? But other than that, I'd just take the plus money as well. I mean, look, Derek Carr has thrown multiple touchdowns, like 2 or more touchdowns in 5 of his last 6 games. So it's not like he's not getting the ball in the end zone. He's just not popping off with those like 400-yard games. But he could easily find the end zone multiple times tonight. Steve's right. The Chargers like to run the ball. I mentioned the OC shift. I think you'll see more Melvin Gordon in the red zone going forward anyways. So, yeah, I'd just take the plus money here.
Rookie of the Year candidate, maybe even the favorite, Josh Jacobs at this point. He has 3 multi-touchdown games already. We're halfway through the season. Would you chase him finding the end zone at least twice tonight, Reed?
Yeah, this one's tough. When you look at the Chargers, they've allowed James Conner to do this and some other spots where these running backs have gotten 1 touchdown, like a Derrick Henry. And to what Steve was saying earlier, I actually would disagree a little bit that Josh Jacobs, he's 6th in terms of rushes inside the 5. And yes, if they're inside the red zone, that 10 or that 20, they do decide to pass. But once they get really close on that goal line, they hand it off to Jacobs. And so when you look at that in just terms of their first quarter scoring, because I think this has to happen earlier in the game in the first half, the Raiders actually rank top 10, top 5, or close to it in terms of first quarter and first half scoring. We hope that's going to be Jacobs. If they get into that goal line to go scenario, I think they hand the ball off to Jacobs more than once. And so I do like this bet.
Plus 350 if you are listening and not reading. What do you think here, Jeff? Jason, multiple scores?
I just almost never chase these multiple scores. I think if I was going to do it, I'd probably go with bigger odds with like Mike Williams on the other side. I mean, plus 350, it's just not really enough juice. I mean, like there's just so many, obviously touchdown luck comes into it. Jacobs could go off for a snap, etc. It's really not that bad a scenario. I mean, Jacobs is getting all the red zone work, which is what you want in a situation like this. But having a guy rush in twice, 2 weeks in a row, it's a little bit far-fetched. Also, Jacobs isn't that involved in the pass game, so the likelihood of like a passing touchdown to complement a rushing one, it's just not that likely. So I'd fade this.
We're trying to decide, obviously, who's going to have more touchdowns for the Raiders at this point. Bukes, is it going to be Derek Carr throwing them? Is it going to be Josh Jacobs running them? A nice combination of both. All the while, well, at least you think they're going to go over the 48. We don't have a wide consensus there, but what do you think here?
I appreciate Reed saying, oh, well, Josh Jacobs does this in the 5, or what the hell ever. Like, I don't care what he does at the 3, at the 7, like, whatever. What I know is, overall, when the Raiders are in the red zone, they like to throw the ball. So I don't really particularly care for the plus 350. The odds are great. If you hit on them, congratulations. Go at Reed and be like, oh, thanks for that useless 5 stat, whatever the hell it was he gave me. I just think that you're much better off going with what we talked about earlier. Who do you think is going to throw the more touchdowns here between Carr and Phillip Rivers? Like Jeff said, I hate touching the going after these multi-touchdown bets. I mean, it's just such a crapshoot on a week-to-week basis. You almost nearly never hit them there. You might as well just go, do a 4-team parlay if you want to feel really cocky at this point. So I'm just going to say no to this one, but, whatever. If you want to listen to Reed, hey, have fun. He's a good guy.
I just want everyone to know that Bukes' impression of everyone is so. Everyone who's watching this, that's what Bukes thinks you guys out there
pretty
sound
much how
like.
everyone talks, though. I think.
I mean, it really is.
On Twitter,
I mean,
that's true, actually.
That me.
Everyone spurts out all this jargon that usually doesn't make any sense anyways. That's what you all sound like, except for me.
Oh, yeah, exactly, like BVP.
I got to be the heel.
Should hear what the guy says when he's not on camera. Thank you, fellas. We'll have you back later on, some of you anyway. NBA on the way first. Adam Levitan joins the sweat right after this. 6 teams with a bye in Week 10, but we don't. We're here. This is Levitan's Leverage. Adam Kaufman with the man of the hour, Adam Levitan. Levy, I'm not going to lie. We need kind of a bounce-back week from you here.
I'm ready. I don't remember what I picked last week, but I assume it was bad, so let's make it good.
Yeah, it was Josh Allen, Dalvin Cook, and Allen Robinson. It wasn't pretty.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
All right, we're going to go maybe you're going a little chalky with this first one here because no receiver is priced higher than Michael Thomas. He's 8,300. Saints are home against a faulty Falcons defense. The dude is averaging about 25 fantasy points per. We know he's good, but you're not worried about him failing to return value with his cost at a season high?
Yeah, no, I think that people are going to say, oh, well, Michael Thomas is the most expensive receiver. He's 8,300. I want to play Christian McCaffrey. I can't play Michael Thomas also. I think that would be a mistake because this is one of the best spots that Michael Thomas will find all season, home game against the Falcons team, which really can't defend wide receivers whatsoever and has had tons of problems with Michael Thomas in the past. Drew Brees is back. Just sets up really well for Michael Thomas to continue his high floor, high ceiling kind of season.
Second most expensive wideout, Tyreek Hill. So right behind him, 7,700 on the road to take on the Titans. Isn't this, a little bit of a shaky play with the Chiefs QB situation?
Yeah, I do expect Patrick Mahomes to come back and play in this game. Patrick Mahomes practiced full on Wednesday, and I think he'll come back and play well. And the way that you've been beating the Titans is with outside perimeter receivers just completely lighting them up. We saw DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel really get off last week. The Bucs guys got off on them. So I think that Tyreek Hill's contested catch ability and Tyreek Hill's speed is just going to be way too much for these Titans perimeter corners.
One more, this is a running back, Devin Singletary. He's $5K for the Bills, visiting a Browns run D that is known to buckle, does week after week. I'm assuming you're motivated by the uptick in workload, though.
Yeah, and I mean the price. Devin Singletary for a guy who projects to see 60, 70% of the running back touches for the Bills and has a lot of juice in him and can make really big plays and plays well in the pass game. Well, we haven't seen guys on DraftKings like that around 5K very often. Even guys like Josh Jacobs got up to 6,200 last week. So I think the price combined with the matchup and the way that we've seen Devin Singletary's role grow is exciting.
Last week, an unofficial buy for Adam Levitan, so we're back at it today. Thanks, pal.
All right, good luck.
He's the best, isn't he? NBA crew in the house. DK contributor Gary and Thorne and RotoWire's Alex Barutha. Guys, good to see you. No load management for these guys. All right, what's up? Blake Griffin has been cleared for basketball activities. If you didn't hear that, that means the All-Star is going to play again soon. But living here in the moment, I'm more excited for tonight's 4-game slate. I'm sure these guys are. Narrative-filled game in Charlotte as well, highlighted by Kemba Walker's return with Boston. The Seas star is the most expensive guard on the slate. He's $9,300. It is a revenge game after the Hornets refused to give him a supermax or even a regular max deal over the summer. Is he worth it, though, Garion?
Is he worth a supermax? I don't know. Is he worth it tonight? I have my reservations about this. I love a good revenge game as much as the next guy, but I don't know. I think Jaylen Brown being back tonight is a massive deal. I think it's fair to say that Brown's presence has a bigger impact on Gordon Hayward than it would on Kemba Walker. But at the same time, small samples here, but when Jaylen's playing, we've seen Kemba's usage rate go from 31% to 27%. We've seen him go from 1.27 DraftKings points per minute to 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. So, again, marginal slippage, but still slippage. And this is a guy who's the second most expensive player on this slate. 2 slow-paced teams. I don't know. There's just a lot of mouths to feed in Boston. I'm not super confident about this.
Definitely a lot of balance to that lineup, Alex. So what do you expect here for Kemba tonight?
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with Garion here. I think this might be a trap at 9,300. I mean, this is the most expensive he's been all season long. And 9,300 is a fair price. I mean, he's hit at least 45 DraftKings points in 4 of the past 6 games, but the script of this game could get out of hand. Celtics favored by 7. That could end up being too low, honestly. And it's just, I don't think he should be more expensive than Damian Lillard, who's at 9,100. And we'll probably have to play 40 minutes to try to get a win against the Clippers. And the Trailblazers actually have a higher team total than the Celtics. So it's a fair price. I'm worried the ownership's going to be way too high for it to be worth it.
Different game. Jimmy Butler, 7,200 against the Suns. He's $900 cheaper than he was his last game. It's a pretty steep drop. You like the discount for the Heat star, Barutha?
I love the discount here. I don't know why he got discounted so much. The game in Denver, it was a blowout and Butler only played 29 minutes, but the thin air in Denver, it just gets to people. And, Butler's played fewer than 30 minutes in back-to-back games, but they were both basically 20-point blowouts. One of them was a win in favor of the Heat. So I think normally he's going to play 30 to 35 minutes. I think we just have 2. He's coming off 2 just strange game scripts. I mean, he's a guy who could go for 50 DraftKings points on any night. Would not surprise me. I think this is a really good price for him, despite going up against a Suns defense that's played pretty well.
So I guess which Jimmy Butler are we going to get here, Garion?
Well, I think we've kind of seen the same Jimmy Butler all season long. And to Alex's point, when you have someone with this type of ceiling, at $7,000 to begin with, and then if you want to factor in that he has that $900 discount kind of baked in from Tuesday, this is a really nice spot. I mean, Jimmy's averaging 42 DraftKings points per game so far this season, but you have to really think about the conditions he's done that in. I mean, as Alex mentioned, he has not played the full allotment of minutes that we would expect Jimmy to play in most situations. He's only shooting 35% from the field. He's taking fewer field goal attempts per 100 possessions than he has in 6 seasons on a suddenly very deep Miami Heat roster. But again, he's getting there. And if any of those numbers kind of trend back towards his career averages, he's probably going to score 50 DraftKings points. So I think when you're talking about a guy in a spot this good, on a team with a relatively high pace, there's a lot to like about this particular spot with Jimmy Butler.
Other side of that game, you've got Devin Booker coming off his best effort of the season Monday. 52 DK points. It's a nice total. Can he do it again, though, and be worth 8,400 here? What do you think, Alex?
I'm okay actually fading Booker. I think the price is fine. It's just that his shooting has been unsustainably hot. He's basically going 50, 50, 90 right now, and he's going up against a really tough Miami Heat defense. I'm sure they'll put Butler on him. I'm sure they'll put Winslow on him if Winslow ends up playing. And in the other 4 games that Booker's price has been 8,400 or higher, he's only averaging 39 fantasy points. So there is a potential here kind of for, a performance that's not as good as you want for this price. So obviously he has the upside and people are going to be willing to pay for that. I don't like the matchup here. I think he's shooting unsustainably.
Gary, are you willing to pay for that same upside?
No. And I think it's kind of funny. You know, we've been talking about Devin Booker as a good stats, bad team guy for so long now that it's strange that he's currently in a situation where they built a team around him and it's affecting his stats from a DFS perspective in a negative way. I mean, the presence of Ricky Rubio is really messing with his fantasy value. You go back and look at some of the numbers and compare them to last season. I mean, this year he's passing the ball about 28 times per game. That was at 45 times last season. He's only touching the ball 53 times per game. That was 50 or 75 touches per game in 2018-19. He's just not the lead guard anymore. He's not the lead creator, and that's affecting his secondary stats. I mean, he's scored 20 points in a game this season and came out with fewer than 30 DraftKings points. These are the kind of empty box scores we're going to start seeing from Devin Booker. So sure, there's the chance he scores 37 points and hits 50, but that's kind of what it's going to take for him to hit value.
Montrezl Harrell put up 63 fantasy points last night. Again, that was last night, so I don't know if there's going to be momentum or a little bit of fatigue, but he's 6,200 for the Clippers, and he's home against the Blazers. Do you want to ride that wave here, Garion?
Well, it's not his fatigue I'm worried about. It's the fresh legs of Kawhi Leonard, because the numbers when Kawhi's off the court for Harrell are staggering. He's averaging 1.37 DraftKings points per minute. With no Kawhi, that number slips under a DraftKings point per minute when Kawhi is on the court with Harrell. Portland, bad overall rebounding rate. They give up a lot of offensive rebounds. So there's a chance that Harrell just dominates the glass and creates his own offense and gets to this number. I don't think it's an unfair price point for a guy who's averaging about 30 DraftKings points per game, but just to expect this upside with Kawhi back in the lineup is silly.
So Alex makes it sound like not too worth it.
It's a fine play. I mean, if there's one guy whose energy I'm not worried about on the second half of a back-to-back, it's Montrezl Harrell. He's definitely not going to take 25 shot attempts like he did yesterday with Kawhi in the fold. Gary made a lot of great points there. But, you know, also his price hasn't adjusted because he's on a back-to-back, and he has that 35, 40-ish DraftKings points upside when Kawhi's in the lineup. So this is a fine price to play him at. I have a strong opinion toward this either way. If he fits in the lineup, throw him in there. If you want to take a discount on someone else, go ahead.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us. We had so much fun, we'll even bring you back. Hockey's coming up next after the latest in baseball free agency. A World Series legend could be on the move. There you go.
Hey, it's that time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Carolyn Azak. The MLB offseason has arrived, and we have our first juicy piece of news to dive into. According to a report from NBC Sports Bay Area, the Atlanta Braves are making Madison Bumgarner a top priority this offseason. The lefty ace was given a qualifying offer from the Giants this week, but he's expected to decline it and hit the open market. The Braves showed interest in Bumgarner at the deadline, but ultimately the Giants didn't pull the trigger on a deal. Now it looks like they'll lose him for nothing. The move makes sense for the Braves. They just saw their division rival Washington Nationals win the World Series with strong starting pitching. Also, Atlanta is close to home for Bumgarner. The Braves are the closest MLB team to where he grew up in North Carolina. The 30-year-old isn't what he once was, but still put together a solid season in 2019. He went 9-9 with a 3.90 ERA and 203 strikeouts. His postseason experience and veteran presence would be a welcome addition to a young Braves team loaded with potential.
We are back, and we're talking pucks, and Awesemo.com's Chris Wassel is in the house. Not literally, otherwise he'd be hiding, and that would be creepy. Chris, it's good to see you. Let's play some NHL over-under, pal. Alex Ovechkin, the most expensive skater on the slate. He is averaging about 18 fantasy points, which is ridiculous. You think he's going to go over or under that mark against the Panthers?
He's going over tonight. He's definitely going over. There's not a doubt about it. Washington and Florida often play some high-pace hockey. I mean, it's literally 40 scoring chances per 60. It's often up and down with bursts all over the place. Goaltenders are going to be under siege a lot. I feel sorry for Bob, Officer Bob, as we like to call him, Sergeant Bobrovsky. He might have to patrol with a little extra coffee tonight. As Ovechkin, look, this is a guy that at his age he's approaching 35, and he's still averaging 5 shots a game. 5 shots a game on net. He's attempting almost 9. I mean, it's just a ridiculous number, and it's nice. He hits the shot bonus often. Really, all he has to do is get a goal, and he goes right over the top.
It makes it sound like we might even see double-digit attempts from him tonight.
I wouldn't be shocked at all.
All right, John Tavares, he's off to a slow start. He is the anti-Ovi at this moment anyway, just 8 DK points on average. Do you like the over or the under that total opposite the Golden Knights?
This is one where, look, he came back last game, looked a little rusty, still looks a little tentative with the finger. He broke his finger. He was out for about 2 to 2.5 weeks. He's having a little bit hard time gripping the stick, which is slightly important in hockey, unfortunately. Honestly, I still will side with the over tonight. I think he gets a cheap power play assist tonight, and a few shots, and that should be just enough to push him over here. It's not. Look, if it's by much, I'll be shocked. It is Vegas. You never quite know what you're going to get. Typically, Vegas is a better road team than home. But Toronto is a worse home team because they score more and they give up more. So it's kind of a trade-off one way or the other, but I take the over here.
Dougie Hamilton having a great season on the blue line. He's collected about 15 points per fantasy points, of course. And that number tonight against the Rangers, you think he's going to eclipse that, go below it? What do you expect?
It's another one. It's kind of like starting to look at these earlier, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm feeling like Vegas here with the reverse. Usually these types of scenarios you're going under a lot, but in this case it's over because look, the Rangers as a metric are one of the 5 or 6 worst teams on the penalty kill. Carolina has had a sluggish last 3 or 4 games on the power play. You figure this is a perfect scenario for them to bounce back against a team like the Rangers who played last night. They're going to be tired at least a little bit. And you have this feeling that Hamilton will get enough shots and block shots to hit either one or both of the bonuses tonight, and that should push him over.
Anders Nilsson might be in a good spot. I mean, the Kings stink. So do you think the goalie goes under or over his 17-point average in the Sens net?
So this is the hardest one of the night. Nilsson can be really good. He can also be really awful. There's been games this season where he gives up 4 or 5 goals like nothing, and then he throws out a 40-save masterpiece. So this is true. Buyer beware. Tonight I'm going to take a risk and say he barely crawls over tonight. Barely. It's going to be one of those games where he doesn't come near the shot bonus. He probably ekes out a win, and it's kind of one of those murky little 25-save, 3-goal allowed efforts that get him about 18 or 19 points on DK.
Whatever gets the job done. Chris, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
All right, for now, lots of college football coming up. Don't go anywhere.
What's going on, people? I'm Brendan Glasheen alongside DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow. Good to see you. And we're getting you ready for College Football Saturday, presented by Wrangler. Jules, 9 games to choose from here, and it truly doesn't get better than this one. Number 1 LSU against number 2 Alabama, Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa. It's the first time since 2011 we get number 1 against number 2 in the regular season. Where are you leaning?
Yeah, I mean, this is the game that's been circled all year on the college football calendar, and now it's finally here, and it's number 1 traveling to number 2. But I've got to lean with number 2 here, Alabama at home. As long as Tua Tagovailoa's ankle is in good enough shape to get 80, 90% of the player, the Heisman Trophy type of quarterback that we thought we would see, I think that we're going to see enough out of this Alabama offense. This is a different LSU team. They play more on offense. They're going to maybe struggle a little bit against this Alabama defense, whereas the LSU defense isn't quite as good as we've seen in past years. We've seen teams get to them. I think Alabama's offense gets to them here.
That's an undefeated matchup in the SEC. We've got one in the Big Ten as well. Number 5 Penn State heads to Minneapolis to face number 13 Minnesota. Both squads are 8-0. Do the Golden Gophers upset the Nittany Lions at home and get that resume builder?
I think that Penn State's going to wind up getting this one. I think it's going to be another really great game, kind of the appetizer here for the LSU-Bama game to follow. But in the end, I think Penn State is the better team. Great story, great season for Minnesota, but I think they're going to get their first loss here.
All right, and one more. Baylor remains atop the Big 12 standings at 5-0 in the conference. Number 11 Bears take on TCU on the road. Any chance here for the Horned Frogs?
I think so. I don't think any of us expected Baylor to be 8-0 at this stage. TCU sitting at 4-4, but they're 3-1 at home. They have a huge win by 10 points over Texas at home. I think TCU can play, especially when they're in their own building, and they're going to be ready for this game, hyped up to take down an undefeated Baylor squad that probably is playing a little bit better than they actually are.
I'm Brendan Glasheen. He is DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow of DK Live, and that's a look at some of Saturday's top college football matchups presented by Wrangler.
Thanks to Brendan and Felix. Let's say hello to Osmo.com's Ben Rasa for a look at Week 11 on the college gridiron. I can't even believe, Ben, that we've already come this far. 2 games on Friday. You got Washington, Oregon State, and that one stands out, really, with the Beavers' 9.5-point home dogs. Who do you like to cover here?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with them at home in Corvallis. You know, it's a weird spot. You got Washington, 4 losses now. I know Utah, Oregon, those are not bad teams to go down to, but at the same time, it's been a down year. And then on the other side, Oregon State's not good, but they've actually had a pretty successful year, 1-2 straight. Good quarterback at home. Like I said, sloppy conditions. I actually think the Beavers can hang around in this. I'll take the 9.5.
I will forever love your bobblehead that is sitting up there, by the way.
Best bobblehead there is.
It's terrific. Collector's edition. Best matchup of this weekend, at least on paper, that features LSU and Alabama. Second and third ranked teams in the country clashing in Tuscaloosa. Bama 6-point favorite against Joe Burrow and company. You think Nick Saban's group gets the win?
I do. I mean, this is the game, so we're gonna find out real quick how good Alabama is. But off a bye at home. I know this is a different LSU team. They're much more dynamic passing. Burrow, probably the Heisman frontrunner. But I really don't know how good LSU's defense is. They haven't gone on the road. You know, Texas, that looked great at the time. They're not actually good. So I have a feeling we see a vintage Bama performance. And once again, Nick Saban gets the job done.
As he so often does. Penn State will take on an undefeated Minnesota team in its building. So could you see the Nittany Lions getting the upset here?
Yeah, I think the Golden Gophers at home can pull the upset. It's this could end poorly. I want to preface that by saying this is the biggest game Minnesota's had in probably decades, honestly. They haven't played anyone. I have no idea how good they are, but you know what? This is going to be an energetic home crowd. They're a balanced offense. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. And Penn State, yeah, they beat an Iowa team. They beat Michigan at home, but I don't know how good they are either. So, I see this spread hovering around a touchdown. I'm going to lean with the home team here, and I think Minnesota actually can kind of shake up the playoff temporarily. Which game looks the most lopsided to you this week? Well, it's going to be UMass. They are awful. I went there. They're the worst team in the country.
1-8.
How they beat Akron, that's a whole nother show, but they're a 35-point underdog to Army. I'll probably be at the game. I live right next to West Point. I think I'm going to go up and see the old Minutemen, but they probably give up 400 yards rushing to Army, and I see an absolute beatdown once again. You're going to need to go and bring a little bit more enthusiasm for your alma mater, I think. It's going to be a long, long afternoon for them, unfortunately. Ben, great stuff. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the games. Sure. Yeah, take care. All right, more hoops on the way after we hear from Pat Mayo and Adam Levitan on an NFC South showdown.
If you play Thomas, do you figure out a way to game stack that and try to use Julio or potentially Ridley, or maybe even you want to get the cheap option and use Justin Gage on the Falcon side of the ball? What do you do with the Falcon side?
Yeah, so I expect Matt Ryan to be back for this game. It's a little concerning the in a high ankle sprain and guys trying to play on that. So that's a concern, a massive concern. I mean, Saints have one of the best defensive lines in the entire league, and Falcons' offensive line, despite all their efforts to improve it in the offseason, has not really improved. So certainly no walk in the park for Matt Ryan in the pass game. You're most likely to get your Matt Ryan garbage time points, I think, and those have been a thing for most of the last 2 years. He can be extremely effective in garbage time. So yeah, I think all your bringbacks are in play. And you mentioned Russell Gage, who played the Mohamed Sanu role. I was never one to get excited about Mohamed Sanu. I won't be one to get excited about Russell Gage. What I would say is the difference is that Mohamed Sanu was often priced, 4,700 on DraftKings. Russell Gage is 3,400 this week. So it's at least worth considering. But yeah, Hooper and Julio and Ridley and Gage are all going to be in play. I would note that Marshawn Lattimore will likely be shadowing Julio Jones. It doesn't mean he can't win that matchup, but just something to be aware of.
I believe it was week 12 last year. So the last time that the Saints, I think it was on Thanksgiving. Can't really remember it this way. I remember it was week 12. Maybe that is Thanksgiving. But the Saints played the Falcons. The first time around was the game where Calvin Ridley scored the 3 touchdowns. And in the second game, they actually stuck Marshawn Lattimore on Calvin Ridley and let Julio run wild because they didn't want that happening again.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look at that. That's interesting to me. I mean, I would be shocked if they use Marshawn Lattimore on Calvin Ridley this year again, but they've used Marshawn Lattimore in different ways. He's definitely not a lock to shadow Julio.
No, I think after they traded for Eli Apple last year, they felt a bit more comfortable, kind of just being like, listen, Julio's going to get his yards against you, Eli. Just try to limit it to as much as possible. This is why I kind of like Hooper in Gage if you're going to take it. Like you mentioned, it's the price point on Gage that's the most appealing, but we know that the slot corners on the Saints are not good.
Right. Yeah, and that's where you want to attack the Saints, and we saw Chris Godwin get off against them there. So yeah, it's definitely where you want to attack the Saints.
The other injury type news that could open up something up here is Davante Adams. He looked okay in his return, but I would expect him to be a little bit healthier, more acclimated to being back on the field. I'm not sure if Bradbury plays for the Carolina Panthers. He dealt with a groin injury and left the game last week. Like, groin injuries generally don't have you coming back right away. If he sits, I don't think anyone wants to use like Davante Adams this week, but the price is down. We know what the upside is. He's sort of like a out of sight, out of mind type guy, but we know what the elite upside is.
Yeah. Man, I thought Davante Adams' price, and he's 6,900, and I'd have to look back to see when the last time Davante Adams was 6,900 was, because Aaron Rodgers loves throwing the ball to Davante Adams all over the field in the red zone. I understand Carolina's been good against wide receivers, but yeah, that one stuck out to me for sure in that range. I think Davante Adams on most weeks is an 8K player.
We are hitting a lot here on this Thursday night, and let's get right back to the NBA. 4-game slate in the association. DK contributors Gary and Thorne, Pierce Dietrich both here, as well as Carr and Phillips from the Shadow League. Fellas, good to see you. We let Barutha go, and we bring you a little bit more attitude, I guess. This is NBA Take Your Pick. Celtics 7-point favorites in Charlotte. It's a revenge narrative for Kemba Walker, for Terry Rozier, opposite sides against their old clubs. Who would you choose to cover, though, Karn?
Listen, as you guys know, like I'm always big on revenge games, but I'm taking the seeds with this one. Like Gordon Hayward has been cooking. It looks like he's finally healthy. We know that type of injury takes a year or two at least before players get back to their regular form. He looks like the all-star that was from the Western Conference when he's with the Utah Jazz again. I'm hoping to see big things out the Celtics this year, but I'm taking them to cover. Terry Rozier. This Charlotte thing, he's going to find out that he's not as good as people thought he was. So I'm taking the seeds easily in this one.
Yeah, Scary Terry's going to put up numbers probably, but it's, volume stats. Pierce, what do you think? Who covers here?
Yeah, I like the Celtics, but it really feels like a trap here. I mean, that's a pretty high number on the road, but the Hornets are just not a good team. They beat Golden State. They beat a Pacers team that was injured. They beat a bad Kings team. They beat a bad Bulls team. Their record looks good, but they are not a good basketball team. And we've got the Celtics who are back to full strength. They've won 5 in a row. They've covered in 3. There was a push. They missed against the Knicks, but again, they got out-rebounded by the Knicks. They won't be out-rebounded tonight. The Hornets are terrible inside. Celtics are healthy. What I would expect is the revenge narrative of Kemba Walker just going absolutely nuts and this thing covering easily.
Beating Golden State isn't a badge of honor this season.
No, that might be the worst team in the NBA, one of.
Yeah,
in the West, not the NBA. Gary, how about you? What do you think here?
Yeah, similar to Pierce's line of thinking. Like, great, you beat the Santa Cruz Warriors. Fantastic. You beat the Bulls by a point. Cool. They're 5-2 ATS. Slow clap for the Charlotte Hornets. It's probably better than we thought they would be at any point this season. But at the same time, when they've had to play a good team, and I'll even throw Minnesota into the good team bucket here when Cat's active, they've lost by more than 15 points every single time. And that's reflected in their net rating. They're 25th in net rating. Boston is 5th. They're getting Jaylen Brown back tonight. I do just think Boston rolls in this spot.
All right, well, loads of points expected in the Blazers-Clippers game. 232.5. That is a ton, and that is the line. You like the over or the under, Pierce?
I'm going to go with the under, and both these teams are 10th and 11th in points per game. They play towards the faster style. They don't play very good defense. But before last night, the Clips had went with the under 4 games in a row. Now, I know they smashed the over last night, but on the end of a back-to-back, I feel like the shooting's not going to be there. I know Kawhi will be there tonight, but Kawhi, he'll probably give you 40 points like he did the last time that he rested. But 40 points isn't 116. Someone else on that team's got to score, and I don't expect them to put up a good performance tonight on the end of a back-to-back, so I will take the under.
What do you think, Karin? Over or under?
I'm going under, and it has nothing to do with how many points combined that it would need to hit the over. It's just for the simple fact that when you look at these two teams, I think of Dame and CJ McCollum, right? That's the head of the snake for the Trailblazers. But then I think about what's the best thing about this Clippers team. We've been talking about their perimeter defense. So you giving me Pat Beverly and Kawhi Leonard just to try to go out there and attack and shut down Dame and CJ. And if those guys aren't rolling, then I don't know how Portland scores or get other guys get involved. Like, I'm taking the Clippers on this to go under.
Kawhi's dangerous. We know that, Garion, but is he enough to touch this over here, 232.5?
Yeah. Look, I was kind of flip-flop on this one. I still don't feel super confident about it, but I will take the over just because Kawhi is back. The numbers are pretty staggering when he's been on the court versus off the court for the Clippers so far this season. They're averaging 105 points per 100 possessions when he's on the bench. That number jumps to 120 points per 100 possessions when he's on the court. They are an elite offense when he's playing. And actually, both these teams are top 10 offensive rating for the season. As Pierce mentioned, they're both towards the top of the pack in pace. I think we get there. Again, I'm not as confident about it as I am about the Celtics against the spread, but I will take the soft over here.
All right, let's take a look at the Spurs, favored by 5 in OKC. Do you expect San Antonio to cover or believe this will actually be even closer than that, Garion?
I think they might just win outright, honestly. I don't know. San Antonio just has not impressed me at all so far this season, and their record against the spread really reflects that. They're 1-6 overall. They're 0-4 at home. And again, this is historically, like, we've got 2 decades worth of data that Greg Popovich does not lose at home. It's happening so far this season. I just don't really know what's going on with that team. And sure, Oklahoma City has not been flashy. They've not really been pretty. But when you look at some of the raw numbers, they've got a better net rating than the Spurs. They've got the second best defensive rating in all of basketball. Like, at least they have an elite skill. They're a great defensive team. I just don't know what this Spurs roster is right now. So, yeah, I'll take the points.
Karin, how about you? Taking the points?
Yeah, because, like, I don't know what's going on either. Like, I'm like Gary, and, like, you look at the Spurs, you got 20 years of, like, excellence out of that organization. And now we're all looking at them like, what is this going on? And what's going on is that, like, all runs have to end. Like, this is the end. Pop is old. LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan are trying to carry this team. Like, they're happy that Javonte Murray is back. Like, that dude didn't even get drafted. And if he did, like, who can name who drafted him at what position? Like, at some point, you've got to figure out that this is going to end, and it seems like this is the end. And then when you look at OKC, I just really feel bad for Chris Paul because I always forget that he's in OKC. And it's just like, damn, Chris. So give me the Spurs.
Yeah, he's just got to live with that. What do you think, Pierce?
Was Pop ever young? I feel like he's always been.
No, he has forever looked exactly the way he does.
He was 55 when he got hired. It's like,
man looked like he was 55 when he was born.
Yeah, I'm right with these guys. The Spurs not looking good. They're not playing well. They're not covering spreads. And on the other end, Oklahoma City is surprisingly running well. They've covered 6 of 8 this year. They barely missed against the Blazers. The second game of the season, they didn't cover against the Wizards, but the game was close. The Wizards closed out on a 14-0 run. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing really well. Chris Paul, we may not know he's there, but he is slowly getting better. There's a ton of role players on this team. They play really good defense. They hold opposing teams' field goal percentage. They're the best in basically the lowest number in basketball. Same thing with three-pointing. They might win outright, but they're definitely going to cover the spread here.
I think we have time for one more. Heat Suns, essentially it's a pick-em. So who would you pick to win here, Karin?
I'm picking the Suns, and I know that 2 days ago I said I was on everything Miami because they were rolling, they were sexy, and the Bad Boys 3 trailer came out. I'm excited and happy, and I understand that, you know, this Heat team has Justice Winslow and Jimmy Butler and these defenders they can throw at Devin Booker. But Devin Booker has been cooking, and great offense beat great defense. So give me the Suns in the pick 'em just because that guy can go off at any moment. So give me D Booker in the Suns.
Pierce, that all it takes to wake up South Beach? Just put on the new Bad Boys 3 trailer?
Well, that and pretty much resetting your roster completely. The same thing that the Phoenix Suns have done. Miami's 5-1-1 against the spread. The Suns are 7-0. Vegas does not know what to do with these guys. But the Heat are third versus the second place Suns. We haven't said that in a decade. These teams are they're both playing defense, and Booker now is pretty much freed up to play more offense now with Rubio and other parts on that team. These teams look really good. And I got to give the edge to Phoenix at home. Plus, we may find out that the Heat possibly could rest some people in the front end of back-to-back. They're going to play in Los Angeles tomorrow. Dare I say, load management, and we may see Butler or somebody rest.
The NBA is thrilled. Garion.
I'm going to put this out there, and I'll let you steal this for your Twitter feed, Cock, because I know
bud.
to play well. But Aaron Baines for MVP.
Yay.
This guy has been phenomenal. I mean, the numbers, when you really look at them this season, the Suns are outscoring teams by 17.3 points per 100 possessions when Baines is on the court. He is a difference maker. It is weird to say, but, they haven't lost against the spread yet. They're the home team. Miami's on a bit of a lengthy West Coast road trip. I'm just going to take the Suns here.
Listen, important loss for the Celtics. He was a difference maker in Boston, just wasn't putting up these same numbers. And speaking of Boston, I'm glad you all joined us. I hope you're doing better than Jaylen Brown. Didn't just have an abscess drained. It sounds disgusting, but he will return, like we said, to the Celtics tonight. We're going to finish with some more football. It's on the way after we hear from the Panel B dudes.
Chargers on the road in Oakland. Potentially, playoffs uncertain. Last primetime game in Oakland for the Raiders, at least for this version of the Raiders, before they move to Las Vegas. Chargers are -1 underdogs, so more or less pick them there, or they're a little bit, they're favored on the road. With an over-under of 49 on the money line, it is Chargers -114. It is Raiders +100. So before we get into the DFS side, when we look at those betting angles, Bukes, what stands out to you?
I like the over a lot. We've kind of talked about this. We've hit them on this before, but the Raiders secondary is so incredibly bad. And people don't talk about how bad they are. We talk about the Buccaneers being so bad, the Texans, the Giants. The Raiders are right there. You look at their game log over the past 4 weeks, 149, 262, 177, 287. That's the amount of receiving yards, 2 opposing receivers, six touchdowns in total. I think my volume's too high. I'm hearing myself too much. But just an absolute number of targets going to opposing receivers and having success with that. And with the way the Chargers have been playing, which seems to be from behind lately, except when it's facing the Packers, who can't cover a spread and get dismantled, that's a different story. That was a sore spot for both of us.
Everything, I'm just scrolling through the board right now, and everything I want to talk about in some way, shape, or form links back to a near miss on my betting board at some point.
I'm with you. With the Packers, they killed me. But yeah, I like the over a lot in this game. I think it's just a tad bit too low at 49. I think this is over a 50-point game.
I hate this game so much. I'm looking at it. I'm trying to think of something that I like.
Really?
Really, because I understand the over, but
Thursday
at the same time, it's 49 points. It's a lot. It's a short week. It's a division game. And the Chargers just shut down the Packers for almost an entire game with a garbage time touchdown. I thought the Raiders secondary was trash. I played. Everything links back to a lost bet. Lions team total over 24.5 on Sunday. They got to 14 in no time and ended at 24 with that goal line stand to end the game. The Raiders defense might not be that bad.
No, it's bad.
And we don't know exactly what the Chargers are. They just had their most impressive win of the season. They always do this. We talked about this a little bit last week. Is this going to be the win that sparks their traditional November-December run to look at a wild card spot? Or was it a fluke and they're just going to continue being the joke of a team that we saw in the first couple months of the season? I don't know if I want to spend my money on finding that out on a short week division game.
Hey, I'm Carolyn Izak with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Baker Mayfield has a plan on how to turn things around in Cleveland and will make Odell Beckham Jr.'s fantasy owners very happy. Cleveland's QB told reporters on Wednesday that he wants to force-feed Beckham early on in games. Beckham has disappointed fantasy owners, averaging only 13.7 fantasy points per game. He's averaging a career low 8.3 targets per contest and has only found the end zone once this season. Baker admitted Beckham is seeing a lot of double coverage, but at the same time noted that their chemistry is continuing to improve. So, which one is the problem, the coverage or the chemistry? The Browns sit third in the AFC North and are looking at a potential fifth straight loss this Sunday against Buffalo. It may not be a great week to try out this strategy. The Bills' defense ranks third in pass yards allowed this season, so running the ball might be the better option. But hey, that's the Browns for you.
Okay, we've got one last segment with DK contributors Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich, and Steve Buchanan. We're talking NFL once again. Showdown picks for tonight's Chargers-Raiders contest. 4 players over $9K tonight, boys. You got Phillip Rivers, Derek Carr. That makes sense, both of them. Josh Jacobs, we know how good he is. And, of course, Keenan Allen. So if you could only pick 2 of those 4, who would you want? Reed.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Rivers-Allen stack. And we mentioned at the top, right, the Raiders are susceptible to receivers getting up the second most DK fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Excuse me. And when you look at Phillip Rivers, he's thrown over 1,200 yards over his last 4 games against the Raiders, 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. So give me that Charger stack on that side. I do think the Raiders will be in the lead, so I think they're going to be passing quite a bit. So yeah, give me the Charger stack.
Bukes, can we interest you in a stack?
Yeah, Reed kind of stole my thunder here, but on a normal slate where Keenan Allen is performing to his usual expectations, he's by far the highest priced guy on this slate. I have no doubt about that, but you look at his recent game log, he's struggling just to get over double-digit fantasy points at this juncture. And honestly, the Chargers have faced a lot of good secondaries as of late. If there was a game where Keenan Allen kind of busts back out of that slump and sees, the guy that we're used to seeing on a week-to-week basis, this would be the one. And I even said at the top of the show, I think the Raiders are going to win this game. I like them to win this game. So if that's the case, that means the Chargers are going to be throwing in this game. So if you're going to be throwing the ball and need to win the game or need to come back here, Rivers to Keenan Allen is the way to do it.
Same for you, Jeff, or you like a different pick?
No, what they're saying makes a ton of sense correlation-wise. I think I'm okay fading Keenan Allen in this spot. I'd probably go with Rivers and Josh Jacobs on the other side. You got to figure if Josh Jacobs finds the end zone a couple times, Phillip Rivers could rack up 400 yards in the spot. Obviously, it's one of the worst pass defenses in the league. And if you fade Keenan Allen, it's fine to go with Mike Williams or Hunter Henry in this spot. Both these guys have massive touchdown upside. The Raiders have allowed 12 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers thus far. So I like going with Rivers and Jacobs here.
All right, Melvin Gordon is $200 more than Austin Eckler. Remember, of course, Gordon missed a good chunk of the year. It's an easy choice to pay the extra money for Gordon, maybe? What do you think over Eckler here? Jeff?
Yeah, this is a tough one. It comes down to what I think the coaching staff is going to do, and I think the coaching staff is going to keep giving Melvin Gordon more work. He saw his highest snap percentage of the year last week, over 60% of the snaps. Obviously, it was more effective. This is a little bit of a better rush defense. It's not that much better. I shouldn't say it's that much better. It is actually quite a bit better. I forgot they played the Packers last week. So this is actually quite a bit better rush defense in the Raiders. They have been all year. They're allowing under 4 yards per carry. I still think outside with Melvin Gordon. I think regardless of how the game goes, I think you might see a few more PPR points too, just because I think they're going to try and get his snap count up. So it comes down to that. I'll side with Gordon.
What do you think here, Reed?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Austin Eckler. If you look at this Raiders defense, they're 5th, like I mentioned earlier, in rush defense, not allowing a ton of production. And that's what you need, right? Melvin Gordon needed the Green Bay Packers and that poor rush defense to really get back into the conversation of being a viable fantasy running back. 20 attempts in that game and a touchdown. So yes, you like his production last game, but that was against a way worse defense. Austin Eckler, yes, he's not necessarily that bell cow that we saw in the beginning, but he's still using the passing game, and that's where you attack this defense. So I'm going to say Austin Eckler.
Bukes, where do you land on this?
I think we're still kind of figuring out how they're going to use this backfield on a week-to-week basis. But if it's been one consistent thing that's been happening is that Gordon handles the majority of the carries and Eckler handles the majority of the passing down work. And, for a game that, once again, I kind of feel like the Raiders are going to be ahead in this one, Austin Eckler makes a little bit more sense here. I know that Melvin Gordon is the guy. He's the RB1. I think that's pretty clear to everybody here. But I think they really want to keep using Eckler in that type of role for those quick checkdowns, the passing down plays, and that's where it comes down to for the PPR points. So, there's no guarantee that Gordon gets into the end zone. So if that's the case here, we could see a higher scoring game from Austin Eckler. So I think I'm more comfortable using him here than I don't think there's really a wrong answer here because, like I said, I think this game goes over in the game total. I think there's a lot of fantasy points to be had here, but because we're a PPR website, I'll take Eckler at this spot.
It's not just running backs, boys. You got some good tight ends in this game, too. A couple of them, Darren Waller and Hunter Henry. So which guy do you like more when factoring in, obviously, salary and expectations for the game? Bukes, right back to you.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, because you look at the Raiders' defense against tight ends, like they've quietly been one of the worst in the league. Like we rag on the Cardinals for being the worst. The Buccaneers are up there as well, but the Raiders are right up there. They're averaging an average of 16.1 DraftKings fantasy points, which is the third highest in the league. And Hunter Henry is just getting a monster target share week in and week out since he's come back on the field. Like realistically, he could be considered the wide receiver 2 on this team with the amount of targets that he's been getting. A lot of people are going to be on Keenan Allen. A lot of people are going to be on Mike Williams. So if you're not taking 3 pass catchers, Hunter Henry could be left off the board here. So I like him a lot. We've seen Rivers liking his tight ends in the red zone too as well. So I'm definitely going with Henry.
Reed, Henry as well?
Yeah, and he's cheaper. He's cheaper than Waller. The hard thing about Waller too is you saw his floor last week, and it wasn't as illustrious as his first half of the season has been. And if you look at the Chargers, yes, they haven't really played any tight end of his caliber, and so you see those numbers skewed a little bit because the Chargers, if you just look at the raw data, they look like they defend the tight end pretty well, but they haven't played anyone. If you look at Hunter Henry, Duke's mentioned it, man. This guy's getting a ton of targets, saw 10 targets against Green Bay. And if you just look at over his last 4 to 5 games, he's scoring a ton of PPR points, and he's not getting in the end zone as much as what those points. So you just like his production and the yards and the catches, especially for PPR. He's cheaper than Waller. I'll take Hunter Henry as well.
Jeffrey, which one?
Yeah, I mean, everything says you should be taking Hunter Henry in this spot, and I get it. I just feel like there's going to be a pretty big ownership discrepancy here because obviously if all 3 of us agree that Hunter Henry is the clear choice, I think most people are going to be siding there. I'll side with Waller just from an ownership perspective. I mean, this is still a player who leads the Raiders in red zone targets. If you kind of like Derek Carr and figure he's been throwing a couple touchdown passes essentially every game, it's a good chance Waller could be the guy here tonight. I think everyone's going to be focused on Tyrell Williams. The Chargers probably will be too. I think Waller makes for just a better GPP field, especially in big fields where ownership matters a lot in Showdown. So.
Well, to Jeff's point too.
I don't agree too much with Jeff about the ownership. Like I still think it's going to be very heavy on Waller. I think it's been pretty obvious that Carr likes going to Waller. Like you look at his target share, it's been pretty consistent all season long, and that's been the thing. Like without Williams, it's basically been Darren Waller. So I think both guys are going to see some heavy ownership. I think Henry could actually have a little bit less between the two, but I still think it's pretty damn close.
Well, and you look at the secondary and the safeties for the Chargers, they're backups. Yes, we heard Derwin James is going to come back in Week 13, but that doesn't matter at all for this game. That defense has been riddled with injuries as well. And so if whoever is guarding Darren Waller is a backup safety, that could definitely net some positive fantasy points.
Bukes and Reed both just raced to react to Jeff. That does not happen often, but it is the current reality we're living in. Guys, 48 over-under. We talked about that earlier. It's a reasonable total, obviously. So that in mind, would you consider playing either DST in this game? Does that appeal to you, Bukes?
I think there's enough offensive guys on both sides that you can use instead of using the defense. Like if you need to save some salary or whatnot, like Zay Jones for the Raiders, I think is a really good option. I think he's 2,600. I mean, neither defense really excels. Like, neither team really has a great pass rush. Derek Carr doesn't get sacked a lot. He's got a good offensive line in front of him. Like, neither one is really appealing in this game. So I think you're better off spading one. If you want to play like an obscure player, like take one of the kickers if you want to go down that route. But neither defense really appeals to me.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes down to kind of like ownership. I mean, no one's going to be really targeting DSTs here. I mean, Steve's right. Like, neither of them are that appealing. I mean, in Oakland, one story here is Oakland's offensive line has been great this year. They've only allowed 9 sacks. They're second in adjusted sack rates. So that makes me really dislike the Chargers. I think if I was going to lean one, it would be the Raiders. They're the home team. They're an easy stack with Josh Jacobs. So I think for GPPs, definitely like the Raiders defense could be on your radar, but by no means a must play in the spot because, like Steve said, they don't have a good pass rush either. So.
Any interest in that defense special teams, Reed?
No, I mentioned off the top that they don't really produce a lot of turnovers. Like Jeff was mentioning, if you're going to go with someone, Oakland, because Rivers is going to pass and he's shown the proclivity to turn the ball over, but the Raiders just haven't really done that, so you don't need to do it.
Guys, I'm just happy that football's back. I don't know what the hell we do on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We need it every night of the week, I think.
I make fun of Emerson's dog for 2 days. That's what I do.
Well, you do draw
Very
cute little pictures. We like that whiteboard. We'll let you guys go. I'm not going to get up and challenge you from thousands of miles away right in the camera there, Jeff. You're off the hook with that. Good news, though. We do this show Monday through Friday, 6 Eastern, each and every night. You can find us on Periscope, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. We're all over. Check us out there, The Sweat. Again, tomorrow night I'll be back with you with probably a similar looking group. They're adorable, wonderful people. And then The Weekend Sweat. It's wonderful too. Bye-bye.